Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Steve Weideman. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Harold Gordon Craig. Harold Craig, known as Gordon, was born in 1884, the youngest son of James and Mary Craig of the Melbourne suburb of Hawthorn. His father was a merchant in Dunolly who later worked as a grain merchant in Queen Street. He died in 1902 when Gordon was 16 years old. Craig began his schooling locally and completed his education at Scott College in 1899. He would retain ties to the school after leaving and was a member of the Old Scots Collegians Club. He went on to work as a clerk for W.H. Blackham, a well-known produce merchant in King Street, Melbourne, and was a keen sportsman, playing for the Hawthorn Football Club and well known as a member of the St Kilda Yacht Club. Gordon Craig enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force shortly after the outbreak of war in August 1914. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas 2 months later. Arriving in Egypt, the 6th Battalion continued training in the desert in what the men would find out later was preparation for the landing at Gallipoli. Private Gordon Craig later wrote in a letter explaining, one day we were told to get our kits ready and were given 50 rounds of ammunition. And we had our packs on and the weight must have been 150 pounds. The men marched 12 miles into Cairo, from where they caught trains and troop ships to the island of Lamos. Then, one night at midnight, they sailed for Gallipoli. The 6th Battalion formed part of the second wave of the landing at Anzac Cove. Private Craig was still on the troop ship when the first Australians reached the shore. He wrote, "About 4 a.m, I heard a gunshot over our heads, so went below. Wasn't taking any risks. We had breakfast and then started to disembark." Craig described rowing ashore, writing, "The shrapnel was bursting all around us, also machine guns and rifle shot. We'd lost a lot of men before we landed, but our boat got safely ashore. The naval officer in our boat, a big chap, when shrapnel burst within yards of us, laughed and said, 'Never mind, the beggars couldn't hit a haystack.' Well, we landed. We marched about 100 yards and then took a rest, and then word came up into the firing line at once. We threw our packs away and got on with the game." Not long after reaching the front line, Private Craig was shot through the arm while sniping at some Turks. He made his way down to the beach where his wounds were dressed and he was evacuated on a hospital ship. He spent a few weeks in a hospital in Cairo, returning to his battalion on Gallipoli in mid-June 1915. After an extended period of defending the front line, the Anzac Force on Gallipoli was called on to take part in a series of operations designed to mask a major British landing to the north of the Anzac Cove at Suvla Bay. The 6th Battalion would take part in the Battle of Lone Pine. Launched on the 6th of August 1915, the Battle of Lone Pine saw vicious hand-to-hand fights over several days. The attacking Australians found the Turkish trenches they were to occupy covered with pine logs. After ripping them up by hand under fire, they engaged the enemy in the trenches beneath for the next 4 days before successfully holding the position. After the battle, Private Craig was found to be missing in action. An investigation revealed that he had been shot in the mouth, possibly the day after the attack at Lone Pine. He was taken to a hospital ship and evacuated from Gallipoli. Despite persistent rumours that Craig had been seen in Alexandria or that his wounds were not too serious, Craig had not left the hospital ship, Dunlea's Castle. With his lower jaw shattered, he had died of his wounds under the care of doctors on the 8th of August 1915. He was buried at sea the same day. Today, Gordon Craig is commemorated on the Lone Pine Memorial on Gallipoli. He was 30 years old. Sometime in 1915, Private Craig wrote to the family of a friend killed in action at Carinthia. His final words to the Posse family reflect the manner in which he wanted to be remembered. He met his death as every honourable man might wish, that is, fighting for his king and country. Private Gordon Craig's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Harold Gordon Craig, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not rear them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.